it's just awesome to see what we're going to talk about today. It plays into all this stuff, guys, and it's about trusting God. It's about trusting God like Ruth did. You know, Kevin made the point from last week's message that, you know, the biggest thing, your God will be my God. When she made that vow, that declaration, it just changed everything, right? It sets things in motion. David made that declaration. You can make that same declaration. You can make those same vows. And David said, I trust in you, O Lord. I trust in God. I trust in God with my future. I trust in God with my life. I trust in God with my finances. I trust in God with my wife and my kids. I trust in God with my health. I trust in God with my staff. I trust with God with my friends. I trust in God for the church in Morgan Hill that Jacob and Stacy are going to be going to. I trust in God bringing David and Andrea Ortega on staff. And so I just trust in God. And then I declare that he is my God. And then I say this, my times, all that's about me, all that's about my life, they're in God's hands. And when we have faith like Ruth did, this is what happens. Faith will put us in the right place. It'll put us in the right place financially. It'll put us in the right place with our bodies physically. It'll put us in the right place with our struggles with addiction. It'll put us in the right place with our faith. It'll put us in the right place with occupation, our jobs, and all these things that we need. Ruth chapter 2, verse 2 and 3, here's how this narration and this story that we're told goes. Ruth, she said to Naomi, remember they get to Moab, or they leave Moab after losing everything. Ruth's husband, Ruth's brother-in-law, Ruth's father-in-law, they're all dead, and they're living in Moab, her and Naomi says, I'm going back to Israel, you stay here, and she says, no, I'm going to go with you, and so they go, and that's the declaration, she made that vow that turned to victory, that I'm going to be with you, and your God's going to be my God. Then they get to Israel, and they don't have anything. Their property is being worked by another man, their livelihood is gone. And Ruth says this to her mother-in-law, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. As it turned out, I love that phrase, as it turned out. I believe this, the more we put our trust in God, the less things just turn out. There are things that are designed by God for us and destined by God for us. But God needs our cooperation, our vows, our choices, our decisions. She makes this choice to go to work. She makes this choice to go to this field. She makes this choice to go gather food that are left behind. And you know what? There was a rule, there was a standing law in Israel for all these farmers, this agricultural society. When you plant a field, when you plant a crop, God would tell them, and then you go to harvest that crop, don't harvest the edges of your crop, but leave the edges of your crop for the poor and the aliens and the people that don't have enough so that they can go along the edges of your field and glean from your planting. It was a gift of mercy to the indigent, to the people that needed help. And God said, if you do that, I will bless the crop that you take that's less, the percentage less than the edges, and I'll bless that more if you give them the edges. And so she's going out to glean under the Israelite law of gleaning. And she happens to go, as it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech, a relative of Naomi. She didn't know any of her family. She was born in Moab and she lived in Moab. This is when she first gets to Israel. She doesn't know how their families work, right? She doesn't know who belongs to who. She's just going to go to a field and start gleaning, and as it turns out, she goes to a relative's field. See, when Elimelech left Israel, this was 10 years earlier. He up and leaves Israel. The reason he left Israel was because there was a famine in the land. And out of fear, he makes a decision that jeopardized his life. It jeopardized his family. It jeopardized his estate. It jeopardized his inheritance. So he left Israel from us. His property was given to a relative. And the reason for this was when Joshua and the Israelites came and they crossed the Jordan and they went into the land of Canaan, to the land that was promised them by Abraham, the land was divided up into sections. This section, let's just think of it this way. the country that Israel went into was divided up into states. Within every state was counties. Within every county was cities. Within every cities was tracts of land. And so a state was given to the tribe of Judah, and a state was given to the tribe of Reuben, and a state was given to the tribe of Manasseh, etc., etc., etc. And so they were given, depending on the size of their tribe, they were given a portion of land. Within that land then, the heads of Judah equally portioned that land out according to the clans within Judah. And then the clans portioned out their tract according to the family name. But once you were given a tract of land, that was your inheritance from God, and it was yours forever. Successive generation upon generation upon generation upon generation. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand why there's so much turmoil in the Middle East today, because they believe that the land that they're on was given to them by their forefather and their forefather and their forefather and their forefather, and that this is their land that was given to them by God through a promise He made to Abraham. And that's not just going to be fixed overnight. So it's a mess over there, and it's always been a mess. Anyway, back to the story. If you left your land, or you died and left no heir to your land was given to a cousin nearby. And it was no longer your property per se, unless somebody took over your property in your name on behalf of you. And so when Elimelech left and took his family to Moab, he left his inheritance. He left his family. He left his sons high and dry, who also died, who left everything. Everyone was left high and dry. They lost everything. But Ruth followed Naomi to this new country, and there was nothing left for them when they got back, because the cousin had the land. And Naomi, being a woman, was not a rightful heir to the land. Only her sons, who were both dead. So she has nothing. There's nothing left. But here's what we love about Ruth. She doesn't just sit around looking for a handout. She goes to work. I'm going to go to the fields and I'm going to start working for us. And I'm going to start gathering, But a lot of people go, well, I guess we don't have anything. Let's just sit around and wait for someone to take care of us. That wasn't her mindset. And I want to tell you something. You're never going to be in the right place, and your faith is never going to lead you to the right place if you're unwilling to work. If you're unwilling to work. You look at all the people that are called in the Bible. Just the other day I read in 1 Kings chapter 19 how Elijah called Elisha to be his assistant. God said, I want you to go to Elisha the Tishbite, and I want you to call him. He was called the Tishbite because he lived in Tish, a town. It'd be like, I want you to go call Mark the Gilroyan. Why was he a Gilroyan? That's so weird, because he lived in Gilroy. Okay, so a Morgan Height, a Holstein. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so go and get well, you know what Elisha was doing when Elijah got there? Sitting around drinking a latte at Starbucks or wherever? No, he was working. All the people that are called in the Bible, you notice what they're doing when they're called, they're all working. Ruth goes to work to provide for her and Naomi. And God loves that. Her faith and her effort put her in a place. The field of Boaz, as it turned out, put her in a place where God could do something for their deliverance. But if she just sat around, what would God have been able to do with that? Folks, we can't just sit around and expect God to do everything for us. We have to have an attitude of, I'm going to get up and take what's mine. I'm going to get up and do what I need to do. I have people say, I don't really understand the Bible. Well, read it. Well, I don't understand it when I read it. Then talk to God about it. He wrote it. It's His letter to you. So you say to God, hey, God, I don't get this. And God will say, you know what God will do? If you start reading it, He'll start revealing it. But He's not going to reveal something you're not willing to read. So we've got to read it in order for it to be revealed. And we've got to work in order to see things work out. Listen, I'm going to say that again. We have to be willing to work in order to see things work out. I know couples that struggle in marriage. Are you going to work on your marriage so that your marriage can work out? Well, no, I was kind of hoping she'd do that. And that's why we're not working. Because one of you is not working. It takes two to make a marriage work. It just takes one lazy person or one unforgiving person to blow one up. One person unwilling to work in a marriage. It says, forget it, I'm not going to do it. One selfish person says, I'm going to do my own thing in spite of my marriage vows. One person says, I don't care what you've done, I'm never forgiving you. And it's done. But it takes two to work it out, both working. In everything. In every relationship, you have to work it out in order for it to work out. And you have to be willing to work. One of the things I told the district supervisor, the assistant of the district supervisor the other day about Jacob and Stacy, because they've not met Jacob and Stacy yet. And I said this about Jacob and Stacy to them. I said, listen, this is what I know about Jacob. He'll work anybody under the table. They both have wonderful attitudes and a great perspective on life. They're not, oh, poor us. They're go-getters. They have a good outlook. And I said, Jacob's a hard worker. What more do you need in the ministry? Somebody that'll work hard, somebody that'll have a right attitude. The rest you learn as you go. But you got to work. And as we begin to trust God more with more of our lives, because I trust God with I don't know what kind of percentage I would give. I would maybe say 65%, maybe God's in heaven saying, more like 35. I don't know. But I mean, God and I may differ on the percentages, but let's just say this. I trust God with some of the things in my life, but some of the things in my life I'm still kind of steering a bit. But as I've learned, what I've learned is that as I trust God with more and more in my life, there are less coincidences in my life. Naomi trusted her life to God, and it opened the door. See, what it opened the doors allowed God to move in their life and to help things turn out as it turned out. We do that. We give God more of our business. We give God more trust in our finances. We give God more trust in our shopping, in our purchasing. We give God more trust in our marriages, whatever it may be that you're struggling with your addiction or with your issues that you have. You trust God more and more with those things. Trust God with your weight. Say, God, I'm struggling with this. I like this food. I like this food. I like this food. Doctors say, this is killing me. This is killing me. This is killing me. But I love this food. I love this food. I love this food. But I'm dying. Help me, Lord. Help me either change this food into something healthy, which you can do, Lord. You can make cherry pie healthy. Or God, you can make me not like cherry pie so much, or you can just give me the strength and will to say no. One of those three, God, but help, because left to my own, cherry pie is going to be here. And it's here to stay, God. All right, so you trust God with more and more. It gives him the opportunity. It opens the door for God to work things out. Her faith moved God's hand. I want my faith. I want my faith in God to move his hand in my life, to put me in the right place, to put me in the right place where things can happen. But I've got to be willing to work. I've got to be willing to move. I've got to be willing to go to be in the right place. So Boaz says to Ruth, when she gets there, he notices Ruth and he asks about her. We're going to get into that more. There's some things that coming up in the weeks following about Ruth that is just cool. But he says to her, don't go and glean in any other field. You stay here. And then as Reg read this morning, Boaz said to his men, don't you touch her. And if she goes and gleans in an area she's not to, you don't rebuke her. You don't say anything to her. Boaz was the man. He was the boss, and he said, you treat her like one of my servants. She needs water, you give her water. She needs rest, you give her rest. And I even want you to start throwing some stuff her way. You take care of her. And he says to her, don't go away from here. Because, and we're going to look at the next point after we look at Boaz for just a second, because I want to tell you something cool about Boaz. The man Boaz will not rest until the matter's settled. That's what Naomi said to Ruth. Because God uses Boazes in our life to help cover us, to help do some things, which is leading us. See, this is a segue into our next point. But here's what's cool. it says when Ruth goes, as it turned out, she went to the fields of Boaz to work and glean. And then it says, just then, Boaz arrives. Really? See, there's no coincidence here. She's in the right place. She's at the right time, because faith does that. The name Boaz means fleetness. You think of it this way. Boaz will not rest until this matter is settled. He took care of business. He didn't procrastinate. The man was quick to do what was right. And his name meant fleetness. And it didn't mean he was a fast runner, though it could have been. He may have been the fastest guy in Israel. I don't know. But I know this about him when you read. He didn't let things wait and just kind of, well, we'll see how things work. He just went and took the initiative and got things done. Once again, you've got a man who's willing to work. You have a woman in Ruth, she's willing to work and what God can do with people who have faith and effort and are willing to work so that things can work out. Maybe God's trying to tell us too something about him. Because you know in the Old Testament, the story of Boaz, Jesus is a type of Boaz. A type meaning the things you see in Boaz are given to us by God. It's the story. God's wanting to illustrate some things about Boaz to say, hey guys, look, you know Boaz, you know how cool that is? Jesus who's coming will do all this and more. The warrior that David was, God's saying, hey, that's a type. The things you see David doing, when Jesus comes, he's going to do that and more. Okay, so God's maybe wanting us to understand that he's fleet. He'll take care of what needs to be taken care of when it needs to be taken care of. And our faith is what unlocks the door or opens the door or releases his hand to work in our life. Does that make sense to you? Let's talk about how not only will faith put us in the right place, but with the right people. I need to be with the right people because I can be with the wrong people and it'll mess me up. Exodus 23:2 says, do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. Sometimes you can just be in the wrong place with the wrong people and get swept up doing something stupid. And the next thing you know, you're in jail too. And you're like, but all I did was, and the police will go, you were there. It's called an accessory. You were accessorizing. What we need is to successorize, not accessorize. We need to be with people that help us succeed in life, not put us in jeopardy or harm or in trouble. A companion, Solomon said, a companion of a fool will suffer harm. In other words, you can be at the wrong place with the wrong person and they say or do something stupid and you're the one getting punched in the face. It happens. It's called a bar. I didn't know if you knew that. But just then Boaz arrives. The right person now is here. God says, okay, her faith, things are going to turn out. I'm going to lead her to this field. She's in the right place now. And now the right person's coming. And God's saying, I'm putting some things together here because they want things to be put together by me. Because she's made a vow to follow me. And then she is going to stick by Naomi. And I'm going to make sure that they're victorious and that things work out. See, there are a lot of fields that Ruth could have gleaned in. A lot of fields. In Bethlehem, which is where this is taking place, there were fields everywhere. People were growing stuff all over the place. She just so happened to go to the fields of Boaz, the place where God had prepared for her to go. Because there were people at that place that she needed to meet and become a part of. God has led some of you to this place as a church where you've met some people at this church that have strengthened your life, that has encouraged your faith, that have walked with you through hard times and celebrated with you through victorious times. That's the kind of people you want to be around. It's obvious God's hand was at work putting these things together. Something special. And you know what? As you read the Word of God, it's something God's known to do. When you start trusting in God, special things start happening. And some would say, man, you're so lucky. And you're thinking, I'm so blessed. How is it that you got that? God has favor on me. Why does God have favor on you? I don't know. I asked him for favor. You know, I ask God for favor all the time. When I'm meeting with people, when I'm going to certain places, I ask God for favor. God, open doors for me. Give me favor. Put favor on my life. And then some people go, well, why does he get that? He's a pastor and he gets that. I'm sorry. God he likes me better than you. Did I say that out loud? I did. That came out, was that out loud? Because I was thinking that in my head, but I mean, I wouldn't say that out loud. I did. Why wouldn't God like you more than me? Why wouldn't God like anybody more than anybody? I don't think God likes people over other people. I just think some people like God more than others do. I like God to help me. God doesn't like me more than he likes you. But and I'm not saying I like God more than you. I don't know. But all I'm saying is there's people that say, why do you get that and I didn't? I don't know. I asked God. You do not have, James says, you do not have because you do not ask God. It's not so hard. You can start asking God for more sales. You can start asking God for better clients. You can start asking God for more staff, more help, better help. You can start asking God to start removing some of the clients that have been driving you nuts and stealing from your business. And then they come in and say, we're going to be leaving your firm and going to another. And you're going, oh, we're so sorry to hear that. This is what faith can do for us. It gives God a chance to do something special in our lives. Faith puts us in the right places with the right people. And let me tell you something about God's plans. They work best when we are where we're supposed to be and we're doing what we're supposed to do. That's where his plans work best. God had a plan for Morgan Hill, this town. God had a plan for this church. But he had to get Jacob to get his head right and start serving Jesus. And that took about, 6, 7 years ago? I mean, Stacy was ready to go long ago, but it took Jacob a while. But most of the wives, all the moms out there are going, that's the way it is. I'm ready to serve Jesus. I'm waiting on dummy. If that offends you, I'm really not that sorry about that. I've talked to a lot of men. I know a lot of men. God made boards for men. We need to be hit over the head with them sometimes just to get us to move. You see that film, that video we saw on Moms and how she knows where everything's at? The kids would say, Dad, do you know where this is? What would I say? Thank you, guys. We know the answer. Go ask your mother. That's how men handle it. Go ask your mother, and now leave me alone. That's what we do. All right. We all need God's help. Every one of us need God's help. There's not a person in this room that doesn't need God's help in something. Come on. We all need God's help. And if you don't think you need God's help, then you need God's help telling the truth. We all need God's help. And his way of helping us is to use people. But we've got to be, by faith, in the right place at the right time, serving with the right people. And those that God uses are most often the ones that understand his plan, that God has. In other words, they realize that there's a depth of life that's more than just what's happening on the surface. I want that kind of knowledge. I want that kind of sense that there's something more here, and it's God, that God's at work. And this is what Ruth said. Blessed be the man who took notice of you. Well, God took notice of me. God's taken notice of you. But we've got to want to work for it. We've got to want to believe for it. We've got to be able to speak it and trust it. Trust God. and know that God's putting us in the right places. And sometimes you're doing something, you're going, I don't know why I'm here, and I don't want to be here. And then God's able to do something special in your life. Will you bow your heads? Favor. Don't you need God's favor? I mean, couldn't you use a little God's favor at work? You're looking for a soulmate, you're looking for a life partner, you're looking for a husband or a wife, and you've searched and you've looked. Couldn't you use a little of God's favor there to put you in the right place with the right people? I am so indebted to God and so grateful to God that He has led me places. I wish I had time to tell you of all the times that God put me in the right place. I wish I had time to tell you about how I came to Gilroy and didn't even know this place existed and did not want to come. And God just kept pressing on me. And I had offers. We could have gone other places, and God just said, Gilroy, 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 Gilroy. There's nothing there. There's no people there, Gilroy. There's not, God, no. I'm living in a town of 2,000 people, and our church is 10 times larger than in Gilroy. I don't want to go there. Gilroy, Gilroy, Gilroy. The right place. And then God has put us in around so many right people. Step out. Be willing to work. Be willing to work. Father, I thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.